Hello and welcome to Take Control of Your Liberty with Scott Tregurtha, where we help critical thinkers by giving you the most true and accurate information we can find, which they should be giving you on mainstream media, but are not. So you can decide for yourself and take control of your liberty, your freedom, and your future. And now, here is Scott Tregurtha.
Hello, everybody. Today's guest is Jacob Chansley, who has become known as the Qanon Shamon or American Shamon. And any of you who observe the media have seen the video recordings of him at the Capitol during the January 6th protest, dressed in his shaman garb. He was wrongly incarcerated for over 2 years, some months of that in solitary confinement, for merely showing up to peacefully practice his First Amendment rights. But whatever the media and our in-justice system wants to call him, he's simply an American patriot who wants to help. So I welcome you to come listen to the real Jacob Chansley discuss his patriotic philosophies, as well as his ideas to help our country and his fellow man. Jake will be here in 1 second. Hey, Jake, welcome to Take Control of Your Liberty.
Yeah, I appreciate you inviting me to be on.
Yeah, sure thing. As I was talking to you earlier about, the reason I had you on is you've done a lot of things. You are a shaman, correct?
I practice shamanism, that's correct.
All right. And you do a lot. You're a veteran. You are a Trump supporter, and you're involved in many things. And you're actually somebody who's doing something. That's what those are the kind of people I like to interview and try to encourage more people to do things. And one of the big things you did was you actually went to the January 6th protest to help support Trump in that fraudulent election we had. And then, of course, you paid your dues for it. And I know you spent like a total of over 2 years in confinement, in prison, and in some of that was in solitary, and just a couple months at house arrest, I guess. So what I want to ask you is, first of all, and I'm going to get to a lot more stuff, but in general, what motivates you to want to do these things and do what you do?
Oh, I'm thinking about future generations. And I mean, our own as well, of course. But if we don't do something now, do something, not say something, do something now, then our children 7 generations away will suffer way more than we ever could right now. So I'm thinking about the future.
Okay, good. And now, of course, this election that's coming up is extremely important. Speaking of future, what do you think's going to happen if now we already saw what happened when Trump didn't make it the last time, largely because of fraud, and you did everything you could to stop that, the fraud, right? Anybody who went and protested did. I did through letters and so on. We saw what happened. Now, if he doesn't win again, and I think the only reason he won't win again is mainly because of fraud, if he doesn't. But he's gonna. But if he doesn't, what do you think we're in store for?
Well, he didn't lose in 2020, in my opinion, and I don't.
That's
think
right.
he's
He
gonna
didn't really lose.
Now, in 2024. The illusion is being created through the mockingbirds in the media and Hollywood, and just war tactics that somehow Kamala Harris even stands a chance. Trump is going to win in a landslide if it's an honest, fair election. But we haven't had honest and fair elections in this country for a long time. And that's the reason why we're in the situation that we're in the first place. So the only reason why I think it really matters now is because at this point, if we continue to do what we've always done, then we may very well not just go into like a depression, but also things like situations like World War III and pushing the entire globe to the brink of total destruction. I mean, there's at this point so few people that are benefiting from the status quo that they must force our compliance. The illusion is over with. Most people are aware of what these people are intending to do and what they want to do. So, I mean, like the illusion's not there anymore. So now all they have is force. And the thing is though, is that I think that if we make it too big to rig, then they can't rig it.
Yeah, that's one tactic we all have to do. Everybody needs to vote. And any of us that can need to poll watch, do whatever we can.
I'm so sorry. Oh, yeah, totally.
Oh, that's all right. Yeah.
I'm sorry, that was my alarm.
Oh, no problem. We've got to do that. And we've got to prevent the fraud too, as much as we can. Literally, we've got to do anything and everything. And it's like I said, the gloves are off. I mean, as far as they're concerned, they're like a thief who's through trying to hide. That guy's right out in the open, running from the convenience store, trying to make it to his car before he gets shot. You know what I mean? They've been exposed. I'll put it that way.
Yes. That's what I'm trying to say is that the illusion's over with now. Now all they have is force.
And they're using it. I mean...
Yes, they are. But the thing is that the more you take from people, the less they have to lose. And the more often you use monikers and labels and brands like racist or bigot or homophobe or transphobe or whatever, you actually... it loses its potency, so it really is a step backward in all of these tactics that they have. They will only work for so long, right? And that is the flaw in their strategy, is that it will only work for so long. The truth is something, use of the truth and speaking the truth is a strategy that will work long term.
Yeah, correct. And that's one thing I've been saying about, how they don't trust Kamala to, and I don't care that I pronounced that wrong. They don't trust Kamala to have an interview, right? And to actually be on her own in front of a mic. And that's my opinion when I look at it. The reason she and people like her have to really think about what they're saying and can't really count on themselves having the answers to questions is they're not dealing with the truth. It's easy. If you know the truth, all somebody has to do, they ask you whatever they ask you, and you just blurt out what comes to your mind, right? Because it's just the truth. She has to think and, what should I say here?
Very well either.
That's right. And she doesn't do it well is the problem. She's not a good liar. She has to think about it.
She's not a good thinker either. That's what I'm saying. She has to think about it, and she's not very good at that either. So she's not a good thinker or a good liar.
Right, and we've seen politicians who are bad guys, but they are good thinkers and good liars. She is not. So it's hard for her to. If you ask her a question, she's not sure herself what's going to come out of her mouth. So, what's
incredible is the way that they've transformed her in the media. She was the most unpopular vice president in history. She was the least popular candidate in 2020 and probably in Democrat Party history. And now all of a sudden she's America's sweetheart you know, and she's somehow going to save the country from all the problems that her and her administration have made, you know, and have wrought on the country. It's if anything, it first of all shows how stupid they think everybody is.
Yep.
And it also shows how forgetful they believe everybody is. It also shows how detached they themselves are from reality, because they think that they can put out a PR campaign and all of a sudden people's lives and their perception of what's in their wallet and how much bills are or how much groceries are somehow going to change, and that's going to be disassociated from Kamala Harris, even though she's vice president. You know, there's all of these different things. You know what I'm saying? That
Yeah.
It's very, very clear that the people that are behind this push, they think that because they own the media, somehow they can convince people not to believe their eyes, and their ears, and their wallets.
Right. And to tell you the truth, as you know, as years have gone by, they have gotten away with that quite a bit. Um, it was, you know, ever since I got out of the Air Force, as I was telling you, you know, I saw what I saw over there in Southeast Asia. They said there was no war, but the war was actually going on. And from the time I got out, I was investigating like who's behind all this stuff, what's going on. And when I was telling people right then, there's no difference between the Republican and the Democratic Party. It's all good guys and bad guys, whichever party they're in. You've got good and bad in both. It doesn't matter. It's the powers that be will use either one, either party, and whoever they can out of either. At any rate, when I would talk like that, I'm talking back in the 70s, 80s, people would look at me like a deer in the headlights, you know? Now, and it's gone that way until Trump. Until Trump came along and COVID. Then people, of course, during COVID, we really got to see how stupid people could get and how much the media was able to manipulate them. And they did a good job there.
To a certain
You know,
extent.
anyway, yeah, to a certain extent. I mean, there was a good amount of people.
Like, COVID is a double-edged sword for the deep state. Yeah, it got a bunch of people to lock down and to willingly mask up or take some sort of a jab or whatever.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, what it also did is it woke up millions of people that would have never otherwise been awake because they were forced to be uncomfortable. Comfort is the like enemy of the adventurer or of the knowledge seeker. You can't be comfortable and not have your reality shattered. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
If you're gonna experience things in the world that show that your view of reality is actually is on a very limited amount of information, and when that new information hits you, it's gonna make you uncomfortable. It's gonna give you cognitive dissonance, and you're gonna be like, well, shit, I didn't know anything. What else don't I know? And that's a terrifying thing. But that is what COVID did for people. Is it woke them up to saying, I don't know anything, and I'm listening to what my kids are being taught in schools. I'm looking in what they're saying on the TV about masks, even though that doesn't make sense. This whole social distancing thing doesn't make sense. They're saying I'm not essential and I can't go to work, but I got rent to pay, I got bills to pay, I got kids to feed, you know. And then, oh, you gave me $600, a $700 check. You know, whoa, well, thanks a lot, you know. So it really woke people up to how little the government cares for them and how much they pretend to care so that they can roll out and centralize more power.
Yeah, exactly. This is the point I was coming to. All my life since, you know, like the 70s, 80s, when I got out of the Air Force, when I would talk like that, you know, about, people behind the scenes manipulating the parties and manipulating the people, and all that, people were like in disbelief. But since Trump and then COVID, now you can talk like that. I mean, and people don't like bat an eye. I mean, they're talking like that on like Newsmax, which I know a lot of people think that is like not mainstream, but
No,
they're
it's
they're
mainstream.
corporate news. You know what I mean?
Yes, they're corporate news,
Yeah, but they're talking like that. You know what I mean?
exactly.
And
Well, I'm
so
glad to hear. I'm glad to hear. I've been treated nicely on Newsmax a time or two. There was one time where they were actually kind of clearly biased, but not in a favorable way for me. But that's fine. I did a great job anyway. I you know, do what I do best. So like I when I was in prison, I refused to watch Fox News unless it was Tucker, and I would always turn it on Newsmax because I don't want to give Fox the ratings. But yeah, Newsmax is still corporate, and if they're talking about what you're saying on a corporate level, like Newsmax or even Fox talks about it. Well, even here's the thing, even CNN and MSNBC talk about it, but they talk about it in a way that these conspiracies are all one-sided. They're all on Trump's side or they're all on the Republican side, right? So they still
right,
believe that these things happen and are possible and are going on, right? But they only believe it about a select group. And I think at this point, what I think is really big awakening is that no, it's happening on both sides. It's happening all the time. This whole thing is a political theater. It's all a show. It's not actually moving the ball down the field. It's only taking away more and more of your God-given unalienable rights and freedoms because you're handing them over to the government. Every time you vote for these people, you're handing them over to the government.
right, exactly. And yeah, speaking of Fox, I was watching. I never really paid attention to any of these Fox or anything else on TV. Um, but I did start watching Fox when things got hot around election time in 2020 and all that. But as soon as they called the election for Arizona, that was the end for
That
me.
was
I
me
never
too.
went back.
Yep, that was me
I
too. I mean,
turned it
the
off
thing
and
is that I didn't watch it either. Really, in all honesty, at the time, I didn't even watch it. But when I saw that, because I was at some sort of like an election party, like, and they had Fox News on, and when I saw that they said that Biden won Arizona but they only had counted 75% of the vote, I was like, oh my god, yeah, this is so rigged. This is not good.
right, exactly. So, yeah, I turned them off and never went back. But
Good for
I
you, man.
mainly get my news from podcasts and things like that, different various organizations and stuff like that. And I
Well,
always
and
did.
here's the thing, if I may, because
Yeah,
when you say
sure.
get the news, because I ask myself, and I've thought about it a lot. As a practitioner of shamanism, I have to like break things down conceptually to like their bare bones abstractions, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
syntactical construction in my brain. So get the news. What does that mean,
Yeah,
right?
right,
What does that even mean? Get the news. What the fuck's the news? You know what I'm
right,
saying? What's news? Like
right,
okay, you mean gossip? You mean
right,
or what? Like world events? Like what are we even talking about here? So I've come to this place of like, all right, what get the news means to me is learning what's going on in the world from a non-biased source.
right,
Like
right.
that's
Yeah,
getting the news. That
right.
is like learning the objective facts of a situation, but one thing I have noticed is that it doesn't matter what the corporation is, if it's this or that, if it's a corporation that you're getting your news from, then it's likely a packaged deal, and most it's most likely going to attempt to induce fear in your
Mhm.
mind, in your body,
Oh
or
yeah,
outrage, or a number of negative emotions, because then with these corporate news models, they're trying to get you to come back.
right. They have
So when you
sponsors.
go to right, so when you go to independent journalists, that's more like, oh, okay, yeah, I'm more willing to listen to this person. But here's the thing about independent journalists is that they're looking for their next big break, right? They're looking for that next
Mhm.
big story. So that might actually cause them to look beyond something that actually might be more important than this thing over here, because this may not create headlines, it's not sexy, it's not this or that, but it's actually a big story. But this over here, everybody knows this person, this is a scandal with this person here, or this is what this person said about this person, or whatever. So then they go with that because it gets them more clicks, it gets them more money. Where I really go for information, for my quote-unquote news, is I go right to the source, whistleblowers. When you listen to what whistleblowers are saying about their particular little area of government or corporate, corporate hierarchies or whatever, then you're actually getting almost like a glimpse behind the curtain. You're getting a chance to look behind the curtain and see the machine and see what's actually going on. And when you line up all of these whistleblowers and you listen to what they're saying in their respective area of the corporate world or banking or the government or whatever, you actually can get a very, very clear picture of what's really going on. And that is the news, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I think we could substitute the word news with truth. Get the truth. I mean, that's always what I've been after, and I knew I was never going to. Go ahead.
And the truth is not hate speech, right?
That's right.
That's,
That's right, and that's another thing. These corporate news, the conservative, even the conservative ones. In fact, each side tries to get one side against the other, and create hate speech, and that's their big alarm. Their job is to create alarmism, and get you hating this person, that person hating you, and let's go have a fight. You know what I mean?
Yep.
And
at the end of the day, nobody wins except for the people that are pushing these bullshit candidates.
That's right. That's right. And that's what I learned early on. Is that
it must have been tough.
It was. But I learned from people who were truth givers. One thing I was taught. It was like this. I had just come out of the Air Force, and I ran into these people, and they were truth seekers and givers. Okay, and they were like, no. Here's how it works. It's like, let's say you go into a bar, and this guy here tells that guy, you know what he said about your mother, and then he goes to the other guy over here and says, you know what he said about your mother, and the next thing you know, these two guys are in a fight. And the guy who caused it sitting back laughing, right? And so we've got the big money makers of the world, the guys who make money off of chaos, causing this all the time. And they control the media, all of it. And I don't care what somebody's favorite station is. They control all of it via their sponsors and various other means. And it trickles down through there no matter how subtle, and it's going to get you pitted against them. Just like, they're doing it right now. They didn't want us to stop. If regarding COVID, they weren't doing anything like trying to get us to not believe the falsehoods about it. They were trying to get people who are against the mask wearing and all that to be against the people who are for mask wearing and all that, and let's have a fight instead of let's all sit down and have the truth here. If they would just do that on your corporate
discussion, that's the thing, is that when you can't win a debate, you don't debate, you gaslight, right? Exactly. And that's essentially what's happening on a mass scale. And it's because the illusion is dissolving.
Right. And their job is not to get you into discussion. Their job is to cause chaos and please their sponsors. So you keep coming back for more. And, it goes from there, right? You watch their sponsors' commercials and so on. But
and now what does that say, though? And this is something I try to tell people every day about what they do every day. And how they're voting for the system that they want every day. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that somebody is watching cable television news, right? Network news. in between the show that they're watching, they have advertisers or commercials, right?
Right.
Why? Because the advertisers, the people that purchased that time, believe that there's going to be a certain amount of people that are watching the television. Therefore, their attention is on the television, right?
Right.
So they're paying for people's time and attention. They're paying for a certain demographic of people's time and attention, because that demographic of people are going to be the people watching CNN or Fox or whatever.
Right.
And so these companies are then going to target these specific audiences with products or with medications. That's usually what it is on network news, is pharma. But they're going to target these people with ads, right? So they're actually, in many ways, what people have to understand is that one of the most valuable things that they have that they can vote with is their attention and their time. So your time, your attention, and your money. You vote with these three things every day, all day, right? And that right there is the crux of the issue, is that most people are only, the deep state is waging war on humanity 24/7, and here in America we only seem to respond every 2 or 4 years or so. And that's with this purely symbolic participatory act of voting. At this point, we know the elections are rigged. We know the candidates are farces for the most part, local and federal. Not all, but most, right? So what are we even doing anymore? I think it's at this point it's ridiculous, and the real leaders that we need, that are going to lead us out of the current chaos that we're in, it's going to be ourselves. We're not going to be saved by anybody. I mean, I do believe in Donald Trump. You know what I mean? But think about it like this, and this is something I keep trying to pound in people's heads, is that it's like, look, if Trump gets in office, which he will if it's a fair and honest election, right? But even if and when he does, first of all, it's going to be an interesting couple of months between November and January.
Oh, yeah.
Second of all, it's going to be a really interesting 4 years after that, considering all of the illegal, aliens and criminals and, terrorists that are likely in the country that have crossed from the southern border. It's also going to be quite an interesting 4 years because of foreign stuff, whether it be with Ukraine or Israel or whatever, NATO, the UN, this New World Order push, right? But these people are also going to try every PR campaign they have, like another deadly disease or mosquitoes to be afraid of, or, murder hornets. I mean, do you remember the ridiculousness of some of these things that we're trying to push?
Yeah, World War III.
Have to keep in mind. Well, yeah, and then I was going to say, and then there's also that button, and that Trump's somehow going to get us into that. But finally, there's also the point of, okay, well, let's say that Trump does a squeaky clean job, that it's perfect, and he totally cleans everything up in D.C. and gets all of the illegal immigrants out that are part of these cartels and MS-13, gets all the terrorists out, deports them back, our economy's doing great. Let's just say that it's perfect, best case scenario. Well, Trump only has 4 years.
Right.
So are you telling me that the deep state actors abroad are not going to attempt to prop up another candidate 4 years from now, and they're not going to try to undo all of the stuff that Trump has just done? No. So they're gonna do everything they can to get power back if they lose it to Trump in 2024, which means that we, the people, must be educated, aware, and ready to have a new candidate, somebody that is as good, if not better, believe it or not, if not better than Trump, which that is possible. I'm not saying Trump's bad. What I'm saying is that Trump is setting the bar. Let's try to set it higher. Let's keep doing better and better. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
That's what we need.
And Trump would absolutely go along with that. He would, with having somebody better than him. He'd say, hell yeah, I'm just paving the way here. And I'm happy to see the people that are starting to gather around him. like Tulsi Gabbard and RFK
RFK Jr., yeah.
Jr. and oh God, why did his name slip my mind? The guy who owns Tesla.
Oh, Elon.
Elon. I mean, he's starting to pull together a group, a nice core of people.
Well, what's
And
interesting is they're all former Democrats.
that's,
Just like
yeah,
Trump.
absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Like what does that say about the Democrat Party? It says it speaks volumes.
Exactly. And I heard somebody say, yeah, Trump's the best. He's the best Democrat the Republican Party ever had. I mean, because it is, and it's there's truth in that. He used to be one for one thing. In fact, yeah, he used to be one, and all these guys
Trump,
used to be
Trump
one.
Used to be one too. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And now they're all coming
they all
over.
Used to be Democrats. Yeah,
right.
And they're all saying this is crazy. These people are nuts. I'm not going along with it. What's interesting though is that it took so long, with some of these people. Here's the thing about the herd mentality or groupthink, right? Is that because we're social creatures, way, way, way back in the day, that all started, being social, all started because that usually if you're alone in the wild, you're prey.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So exile normally meant death, right?
Right.
Because, if you're exiled from the tribe, and you're out on your own, whether it be other tribes or animals or something, you're screwed, right? So as human beings, when we find a group and we develop social bonds, we don't want to be kicked from that group. That is mentally and emotionally painful, right? So think about how much it took for RFK Jr. and Tulsi Gabbard to be kicked from the party, or kicked. And in many ways, they were kicked from the party because the party would not have them. And the thing is,
as they wanted to be.
This is my opinion. My opinion, but I think both of them are kind of like, more than kind of, in some areas, they're really left. There's some opinions they have that I don't agree with at all, that I think is like, no, that's a slippery slope there.
Same here.
So the fact that they're leaving the Democrat Party, to me, is indicative that it has gone so far extreme ideologically that if you don't pick the extreme of all of these issues, then you will not make it in the Democrat Party.
That's what it's become. Right. And as far as I'm concerned, people like put down the Democrats, but literally they're just the party that the bad guys are using right now.
In one way or another, like you were saying, Republican and Democrats, it really doesn't matter. And we're finally starting to realize that there is a uniparty, and that uniparty is made up of a very small class of people that are international billionaires. Right. And these international billionaires are seeking to govern the socioeconomics, not just of America, but through America, govern the socioeconomics and geopolitics of the world. And that is a really big deal.
It's a very big deal to know and realize, because that's what people don't realize. They're going Democrats, Republicans. I hate Democrats. I hate Republicans. And you're not going to get any truth there. It's good versus evil. And both sides have both. And it's the guys who are standing back, making everything happen, that are actually, getting somewhere with their goals.
Strings. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Exactly. Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And it's unfortunate that most people are not very well educated, because in all honesty, the kinds of things that we're talking about in these realities are well documented realities. But people just aren't educated. They just don't know. They have no idea that the corruption and the level of systemic corruption that is there is actually there and has been there for a long time. They don't realize how bad that corruption actually is, not just for like themselves, but for future generations, for generations prior to themselves. Like, no, dude, this thing, it's like an infection on the body of the country. If you don't take care of it, it's going to become septic. And so we have to do something about it. We have to.
We do. And, that brings up another point, which is we're never going to solve, I don't believe we're ever going to solve this in the long run until the people are handled and are thinking and researching and learning. Because this stuff, like you say, it's been going on forever. I mean, you can trace it back to the beginning of civilization. That we've had oligarchs from the very beginning.
Tyrants, yes.
And tyrants, yeah. And the people,
What it's what it's about, if I may, because tyranny, it's really simple. It's about a monopolization of resources and labor.
Right. Okay.
That's pretty much what it's about, is centralized control of resources and labor. That could be water, that can be food, that could be, metal, it could be a number of things, land, but those things right there, resources and labor, and either a person or a group having control over all of those things is what, I think in many ways constitutes tyranny.
I think you're right. But this leads me to something else I wanted to hear from you. I have my own viewpoint on it, but who do you think's really ultimately behind all this? And it's not one person, of course, but.
Well, I mean, okay, if you want to talk like physically, like in the world.
In the world, yeah. And by the way, I do realize there's a spiritual level to this.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like I like to go to the source. And the source of what is happening on this planet is actually spiritual, more than it's physical. But if I had to choose a place to point the finger, I like to call them the less than 1%ers, because they are literally 0.01% or less of the population of this planet. That's how small this group of people is. And it's not just one family like, the Rothschilds or the Rockefellers or the Wallenbergs or something. It's they're a part of that less than 1%, absolutely. But it's not just one person or one group, or one family. It's all of them gathering together and agreeing on their own genetic superiority and intellectual superiority, and agreeing and socially reinforcing the dehumanization of the rest of the people on the planet. And then through their anonymity, they are destroying civilization and depopulating not just Western civilization, but the entirety of the world. And they are the ones that actually have access to all of the goodies across the planet, as far as like, the deep underground military bases, the black budget projects, and the special technology, like this breakaway civilization. They're the ones that actually have access to that shit, because they're the ones paying for it, right? They're the ones that we're going to get money on loan so we can build these things. Right. Okay. So what they're not going to have the highest level security clearance. They're not going to, they own the fucking system.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So currently what we're dealing with is kind of like a breakaway civilization that has monopolized all of the resources and labor on the planet through international banking cartels, international corporations, and puppet governments. And these are the people that have the tyranny, the control of resources and labor over not just us, but all humanity. And like I said, it's a group. It's not just, one person or one family.
You're absolutely correct.
Have you ever heard of the Club of Rome? Have you ever heard of the Club of Rome?
I've heard of them.
Yeah. Council on Foreign Relations, Bilderberg Group, World Economic Forum. Club of Rome is like in that same area, International Monetary Fund, like that same international type group.
Right.
The Club of Rome tries to stay, behind the scenes. They don't like, being talked about.
Yeah, right. Well, but they do benefit from their manipulation.
Enormously.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, think about it. Like, look at it like this. If all it takes is 3 large investment firms to control the markets of the world, you think that somebody isn't pulling the strings really, really high up in like the multi-billion-dollar range of finance? Like hundreds of billions of dollars. I mean, think about it. Literally, these people could, if they wanted to. People like Elon Musk, for example, based on what he chooses to do with his money, he could affect the entirety of the global stock market. There's people out there that have, as much, if not more, families out there that have as much, if not more money than Elon Musk.
Right. And he's doing good. He's
doing great. Yeah, he's fantastic.
And what I mean, though, is he's one of the good guys. And we're lucky to have a guy who has those resources on our side, despite what faults he...
He's also a former Democrat on Trump's side, right?
Yeah, exactly. But like you say, there's guys we don't even know about that have at least as much money as him who are bad guys. So we're damn lucky to have one of the people with the resources on our side.
I agree. Totally.
We're damn lucky. And I agree with you. And in recent times, when I say recent, I'm talking about going back to our American Revolution. Right around from there, this is from all the study I've done. It looks like this current oligarch that's, running things now, which contains, it's not one, it's several families, basically started with, I'd call it the Anglo-Dutch Empire, the Anglo-Dutch British Empire, starting around our American Revolution, with the Bank of England and the East India Trading Company.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the royal family of England. Mm-hmm. And they eventually lost. We were fighting the same stuff then that we are now against the same type of people, right? Those guys. The East India Company, the
East India Trading Company is like one of the first globalist organizations,
right?
Right.
Right. And the royal family of England, and so on, right? And they were trying to they were doing the same stuff to us we're trying to prevent now, and we had a revolutionary war over it. And they finally ran out of money. It got to be too much of a burden, and they said, "All right, the hell with it." We won, and they went.
American Revolution, right?
Yeah, we won the American Revolution.
Well, no, you're saying that's why England walked away because they couldn't finance it anymore. Because
right.
Well, here, keep in mind, it's because they were fighting multiple wars on multiple fronts, like
the
Caribbean. There was stuff going on in China. There's all sorts of, they had spread themselves so thin, and the American spirit was like, no, fuck you, we're not giving up.
Right.
And they were like, all right, we're wasting our money. We'll get it later. And then think about it, like War of 1812, they did come back.
Oh yeah. Right. Physically, they came back. But what they largely did since the American Revolution and the War of 1812, they basically went covert. Right? And they never stopped. This mentality never stops. It goes and goes. Like that Energizer bunny, it just keeps on going. And they financed the South in the Civil War, in our war between the states, trying to and that was a war, that wasn't just over slavery. That was a war of a slave economy versus a production, industrial-based economy, which is what we had up here.
And, one is also in favor of, one is more so on the side of tyranny and the empire, and the other one isn't.
Right.
You know, slave owners in the South are tyrants.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yep.
of course they would, take, the Confederates would take England's money if they're told, yeah, we'll give you the money. But the funny thing is, from what I understand, I could be wrong about this, they were loaning money to both sides. They were
I heard
to the
that
Confederates
too.
and to the to the federal government, and that's part of what this whole, America turning into a corporation in the 1870s, I believe, 1871. That I think that's what all that was about, was settling that debt.
That I'm not sure of, but that could very well be. But the bottom line is they went covert,
Yes.
and and they they instigated World War I, World War II, and Vietnam, and every war we've got. And so basically, what we still have the British Empire. Basically, you call
Well,
it whatever you
kind of.
want.
Kind of.
I mean,
Hold
it's a
on. No, because,
descendant.
well,
It's a
yes,
descendant.
yes. Well,
Yeah.
but here's the thing. You also have to factor in the Vatican. So you have to
Right.
factor in Rome.
Okay.
Okay. So the Roman Empire, right? And then if you journey further and further back in time, what you find is that pretty much the exact same bloodlines have been ruling from, century to century, millennia to millennia, but they move. When civilization collapses, they move and they go somewhere else. They set up camp elsewhere and they do their thing elsewhere. So all of these different empires, whether it be the Sumerian or the Babylonian or the Persian or the Greek, Roman, English, American, they're all intertwined with each other. They all share
Yeah.
common bloodlines and a common destiny toward, yes, this new world order, one world government type thing. Now, I will say though that here in America, something different was done, and I think that's the reason why England and these families took exception to America and are trying to destroy it from within. Why they hate it so much, and I think it's because these people, these bloodlines, have had rule over this planet for millennia.
Right.
Right now that America has started, it is placed in the hearts and the minds of the people this notion of God-given unalienable rights, this notion that kingship or royal families or ruling bloodlines or whatever, that's all that's antiquated. And this notion that there is something more powerful than government, and that is God, right? So that right there is almost like an open door to freedom from this tyranny that these people have been imposing on us for thousands and thousands of years. And I do truly believe that was what the founding fathers' intention was, and what God's intention was in guiding the founding fathers to create this country, is to create a pathway to global enlightenment, global ascension, global awakening, global freedom, real freedom, not just physical but spiritual.
I think you hit the nail on the head. Exactly. And these guys are very good at being covert. So to nail down and have big discussions and arguments over who exactly it is, and let's write tomes on it and have big television discussion. In a way, it doesn't matter. It's like they're there. Okay, there's a faction there that's doing what you just said, and they would love nothing better than to wipe out America. It's what they were trying to do during the American Revolution. It's been passed on from generation to generation. They have never given up on that, and they're still just trying to do it. And now they're trying to, by pouring in people through our borders and pulling all these strings economically, using pawns like Biden to turn off our energy and all that stuff. They're doing everything they can to shut this country down because we stand for just exactly what you said. We're freedom over despotism. And they can't have that. And now Trump comes along.
Especially if they are attempting to create a communist global new world order dystopia. You know, they can't have a single country buck the system. If one country, especially a leader country like America, says, no, not doing this globalist new world order stuff. No, take your UN and your NATO and shove it. You know, we're not doing this. Take your IMF and shove it. We're not doing it. You know, then other countries around the world can go, you mean we can say no? Right? So that's why they have to bring America to her knees. That's why they're doing what it is that they're doing. Because a global tyranny is not a world where America exists. I'm sorry. A global tyranny is a world where America does not exist. A global freedom is a world where America exists. Do you see what I'm trying to say?
Yeah,
they
I
have
do.
to have it this way. And we're not allowing it. That's the cool part, is that, like, really, in all honesty, it's not going according to plan. Donald Trump coming into office in 2016, I think, was a huge disruption of their plans.
Oh, yeah.
And the way that they had to rush with COVID and how all this stuff is coming out where people are just saying, hell no, I think that was not a part of their plan. I think that in many ways, they got this close to having a global, tyrannical, communist empire. And then it was just ripped from them. And they've been trying to grasp at straws ever since.
Yeah, right. What we did during the American Revolution was not part of their plan, right? Big disruption. Who the hell do these colonists think they are? We planted them there to be our slaves. What are they doing? They're taking over. But you know what it is? This is where it becomes spiritual. The spiritually, we are not, as beings, and I don't want this to go off into a big spiritual thing because we've got limited time and it's another subject, although it is behind this. Because we are spiritual beings and we are not a slave being. We just aren't. We are creative. We thrive on creation and expansion and freedom, and we're basically good. So when you try to shut that down, you lose in the long run, because you can call it the spirit, God, whatever you want. And there's many aspects of this, but that's what we're made of. And when somebody comes along who is not really being themselves and they're being this evil thing, they're going to lose. And they are, except we got to go through holy hell to beat them every time they do this. You know, so.
Yeah, and that's what's kind of interesting about this, though, is that if you look at the way that the illusions of culture are dissolving, the way the narratives and these linguistic structures of falsehoods that people live in, how rapidly they are decaying, then it begins to make sense why it is that our ancient ancestors were like, no, dude, I want to be alive during that time. Because then they get to see not only the old oppressive system fall to pieces and fall away, but be replaced by a new, beautiful system based on liberty, a liberating system that allows for the growth of their spirit, allows them to be creative as opposed to, being stifled or stifling that creativity, allows them to reach their full potential as opposed to forcing them to be subservient to a soulless system, a lifeless machine. And that is essentially what these less than 1%ers want us to do, because they're attempting to make AI and these tools our babysitters. Right. And they can control our minds and our conversations. They can control our behavior, all sorts of stuff through this tech. And through this tech, they're attempting to subvert and control our free will. But if we say no and we go that more spiritual route, then there's nothing that they can do. And they know that. So that's why they got to keep us on the devices. That's why they have to keep us brainwashed. And that's also, I think, part of the reason why things like cannabis or psilocybin mushrooms or peyote are illegal, or ayahuasca are illegal. Because these things like just undo all of the programming that the government has paid billions or trillions of dollars in research to figure out how to program you and turn you into a programmed slave. All that just goes out the window. All that money just goes right out the window with one trip. You know?
Right. And of course, there's ways to advance spiritually without those things too.
Oh,
But
of course. But the point I'm getting at with the substances is that these things threaten the status quo only by dissolving the linguistic structures and the illusions that have been crafted for us very carefully. So, like, you know, you can say to somebody, well, if you meditate, then yeah, you can see life differently. But, or if you pray, or, you know, you get a runner's high, there's all different altered states of consciousness. You can fast, you can have sexual abstinence as an altered state. There's all sorts of altered states. But when it comes to these plants that I have mentioned, the reason why I mention them is, first of all, because they're all illegal. The government has said no. These have no medical, application, even though they know that's not true. They have very real medical application, and it's because what these substances do in the brain and the body is they actually increase neural connectivity. They actually increase and disrupt they increase neural connectivity, and they disrupt certain cyclical patterns for depression or anxiety or whatever in the brain. They also help people with PTSD, get over trauma, etc. So these things actually have the capacity to not just help people get out of these ruts that have been created for them by the system, but they also have the capacity to help them reach their full potential, to help them look at reality differently and see, wow, it isn't what it is. It isn't what my school told me. It isn't what my TV told me. It's not what my professor told me. It's not what my parents told me. It's something totally different. And this is something that is chemically induced, that forces the brain to dissolve syntax. And that is a threat to the system if the system is comprised of minds that are brainwashed.
right. And so they're pretty much against anything that's going to set you free, basically.
So
And
then the censorship of the vaccines, the truth about the
oh,
mRNA injections, then
right.
the censorship of Hunter Biden laptop, then the censorship, all of it begins to make more sense. They've been censoring things from our consumption that would dissolve the illusion of their lies for decades.
Right. Now, so we've got all these, we know pretty much what's going on, right? We know the suppression that's existing. We've kind of identified a lot of it, the history of it, so on, right? And we're never going to be 100% on it. It doesn't matter. The very nature of these guys is confusing. So in your view, what do we do about it? I mean physically here on Earth.
Well, that's what I was saying earlier about voting with your time, your attention, and your money. So this is our slavery, our global servitude to these less than 1%ers is based on a couple of things. Number one, our mindset and the way that we perceive the world, which is why I was stressing, the whole thing about psychedelics, or the way that we view reality having to change in order for us to be free. And part of that mass cognitive hallucination, or that mass illusion, is the value to our currency, which is largely debt-based. It's not. There's no real value to it. So we're all coming to this hallucination that somehow the currency has value, and because of that, our minds are being warped into participating in this evil system where we're actually paying for our own slavery. We're paying for our own surveillance state. We're paying for our own oppression. Okay, so changing our minds, changing our form of currency, changing our form of energy production and acquisition, changing our form of communication, all of these things are musts in order for us to actually move forward. The only way we can do that is by voting with our time, our attention, and our money. If we continue to pay for Monsanto's GMO
Yeah, right.
food, then they're going to stay in business. If we instead pay for organic local produce and organic farmers, then their business is going to thrive while Monsanto's begins to dwindle. It's the same thing for the, the medical system and the healthcare system. So big pharma is controlling that market so that they continue to give people a pill that they will need every day so they can make money on it, so insurance can make money on it, so the universities can make money on it by doing research on X, Y, and Z, A, B, and C, etc. So if you introduce something like what Dr. Rife discovered, his machine that he made in the 30s, where you use frequency and sound to destroy disease or diseased tissue or parasites or whatever, then you don't need a pill.
Right.
You don't need these drugs, and you only have to do it like 1 or 2 times and the problem's solved, right? So the system itself is designed to make money, not make sense. You know what I'm saying? And we need a system that makes sense, not dollars. You know what I'm saying? We need a system that functions not so that money is overturning hands over and over and over again, but so that the problem is most adequately solved with the least amount of resources. So imagine it like this, right? We're talking about the healthcare system, for example. The amount of money that is exchanging hands because of medications, right? The amount of money that's exchanging hands because of those medications being developed due to clinical trials at universities or studies or whatever at universities, the creation of these things in labs, etc., right? So there's a lot of money exchanging hands in there, let alone between, the pharmacy and the customer, right? There's a lot of money exchanging hands, government grants, subsidies, etc., okay? So if you entered in insurance companies as well, if you introduce something like the Rife machine into that equation, and you say, well, you could have this system over here, which is really expensive, and you're going to have to take this pill every day and blah, 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 blah. Or for cents on a dollar, you can go over here and you can get whatever issue you have, whatever parasite or, even cancer can be dissolved. So you don't have to go through chemo. You don't have to pay $35,000 just to, poison yourself and hope you don't die. No, you can go over here and use this machine. And then you can get it for, $1,000. You can get this treatment done and your cancer is gone. Right? Well, what does that do? That means that all this money that's exchanging hands every single day, making our economy enormous with all of these dollars exchanging hands, that actually gets narrowed down to a much smaller amount of money in transactions, which means that the insurance companies aren't going to be able to make as much. Big Pharma is not going to make as much. These universities are doing all this research aren't going to make as much because now there's not these constant problems that have to be solved due to these medications or their side effects or due to the poisons that are in our food or in our water. These things getting out of the system and having a real solution, not only does it create stability in our economy, but it also creates a certain sense of reliability to the system. And currently there's such a mistrust of the system. Nobody knows who to trust. Nobody knows what to believe.
That's right. That's
big,
what
I'm saying?
Yeah. Yep.
And that comes down to the mind once again. So it comes back down to this idea of our minds needing to be freed. So if we were better educated, if we knew about Dr. Rife's machine, if we knew about Tesla towers and infinite free clean wireless energy that Tesla and his Tesla towers or his Tesla coils gave us over 100 years ago, we wouldn't be using satellites. We wouldn't be using cables going underneath the oceans. We wouldn't be using any of that garbage. We would be using Tesla towers. We'd be using the planet itself to send and receive communications on a global scale. And we'd do so without harming the environment. We wouldn't need to mine for, cobalt or lithium with the same intensity that we need to. We wouldn't need to drill for oil. All of the problems of microplastics in people's testicles and brains would not be a factor. There's all of these things, dude, where it's like, well, if we just did this one thing differently, if people were better educated and knew that we had this option, we wouldn't have these problems. So that's the solution. Educate people, give them the solution, and then we go through the doing of spending our time, our energy, and our money into building this system.
I agree. And a big part of that, of course, there's going to be debate over which good, clean system do we use to grow good food and all that and to do what we're supposed to do. Like a lot of these things you mentioned, people need to learn about them, right? And so then they can make a decision and not sit here and listen to it and say, that's weird. Yeah, well, learn about it, right? Then make a decision. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
well, and we've been cut off as far as health. We've been cut off a long time ago from real health. I mean, doctors were not what they are now. Now they just dispense pills and do surgery. They used to be teachers. They teach you how to not get sick, right? So we wouldn't even need drugs. Yeah, drugs might have their place sooner or later, but they're not your first line of defense, right? In other words, to be cynical about it, yeah, after you've done everything wrong and your body is now screwed, yeah, you might need a drug to turn it around before you die. But it didn't have to come to that.
Or maybe you might need the right plant. You see, the funny thing is,
Or that,
about the
yeah.
pharma industry
Right.
is I don't know if you're aware of this, but what Big Pharma does is they look for compounds in the ecosystem. They look for compounds in nature. And then they find these compounds and they say, oh, this compound does this. Okay, like let's say it lowers blood pressure, right? They say, oh, this compound lowers blood pressure. All right, well, let's make a chemical that looks like this and behaves like this, right? But it's not this. It's something we made so we can patent this, and then we'll suppress this. We'll put this compound, this vitamin, on the shelf, and we'll sell this in grocery stores everywhere. We'll sell this chemical and we'll make a killing. Well, it'll cost 2 cents to make. We'll charge $20 a pill. And that is what the pharmaceutical companies are doing. So for almost every single chemical drug that's out there, there is also a like vitamin or a mineral or something in the ecosystem, in nature, that corresponds to that drug and actually does a better job.
That's right, because when you synthesize these things, and I am aware of what you're saying there, when you synthesize these things, now you're putting an arbitrary into the body. It's not something it would naturally take and put to use. So now you're leaving something out there, and now your body's going to have to do something to compensate for what's missing. And that's another big complicated subject, but that's what it amounts to. That's why you could prevent getting sick. And yeah, when you get too sick, there's still natural stuff you could take. And then maybe as a last resort, you might need a drug. Maybe.
But here's the thing, Scott. Think about it like this. If you get sick with the flu, right?
Right.
You go to the store. Everything that you buy that's on the over-the-counter shelf, none of it is actually going to kill the virus or the bacteria or whatever is making you sick. So you can take NyQuil or Dayquil for a week and not feel any better as far as getting better, the virus or whatever dying, right? And your body being able to just move on from it. No, these things just suppress the symptoms. So that's almost all big pharma drugs, that's all they do is suppress symptoms. They don't actually treat the cause.
That's right. And I totally get that. And in fact, I live it. I have had a naturopath for years who I've never even met, actually. All he's done is supply me with herbs and tinctures, right? But I'll tell you, I used to get sick once a year. I used to get a cold once a year like clockwork. You could count on it. And maybe another stomach virus or something like that here and there, right? Since I started taking his stuff like 8 years ago, I haven't been sick once. Except one time I went off it for a while. My dad was dying and I was just neglecting myself to take care of him. And I just wasn't taking this stuff. And I got sick. Then I went back on it and I never got sick again. That's been 4 years. Through COVID, through disregarding the mask thing, in and out of VA hospitals for routine visits and stuff like that, refusing to wear the mask, in crowds, I never got sick. So I know what you're talking about. And by the way,
because you made your body inhospitable for disease, which is really the trick.
Exactly. It can't get sick with this stuff in me, right?
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
and by the way, that naturopath is totally goes unnamed. He doesn't want anybody. The only people he ever dealt with were people he knows or knows through people he knows. He doesn't want anybody to know who the hell he is.
Mm-hmm.
And then he retired and gave me all his formulas. So
Nice.
now it is very nice of him. Except now I got to spend the labor to make it all myself, but because I can't trust anybody to do it, you know. And but anyway, I get your point there. But back to what do we do about this whole economy and everything? That health aspect you were talking about is very important. It's all intertwined. Yeah. Oh,
it's
yeah.
all intertwined. It's all one big ball of wax, man.
Yep. And as far as I'm concerned, yeah, they make money from the drugs and from having you do the wrong things. But money isn't their major object. Their major object is they want to reduce the population of the planet and they want to control you. That's their major object. Money is a reward for the puppets they get to get them to do it. Like all those employees of the drug companies and the CEOs and all, they're just puppets. Their reward is the money, right? But the big guys on top, they do this. They're not doing it for the money. They got more of that than they know what to do with. They're doing it for the control and the power.
Yeah, and the power. Yeah.
Right.
But what's interesting about it, though, is that, and this is the funny thing, man, and this is something a lot of people don't really understand, I think, about what these people have chosen for themselves. Heavy is the head that wears the crown. Okay?
Yeah.
The amount of stuff that they have to mentally process, you know, in order to quote unquote stay in power is unbelievable. Right. And the truth of the matter is what they end up coming to find out, and this happens every so often, is that they see that what they have is not power. What they have is an illusion of power, because then something will happen that will cause them to see, no, you're not in control. You thought you were, but you're not. And then that gets them very, very upset. So then they start to clamp down even more, right? And the people around them suffer, because that clamping down is not a clamping down to maintain control. It's a clamping down to maintain the illusion of control or the illusion of power within themselves. So based on whatever they say, somebody else is going to suffer, and that to them is power. But the thing is, no. That's not power. Real power has nothing to do with money. It has nothing to do with politics. It has nothing to do with social influence. That's not real power. Real power has nothing to do with anything really material. And they find that out eventually. And that's when these illusions of theirs dissolve, is when they realize that they don't have real power. They have an illusion of power. And then that illusion can be taken from them at any time by a being of real power, God.
Right. And it is an illusion because they never actually have it and keep it. They're going after it. That's what they're going after constantly. But they're constantly having to flick off these peasants and fleas who aren't going to let them get away with it. They constantly are having to deal with these pesky people. You know what I mean? And God, right? And their actual real, what they really are inside, right? Because they don't really like themselves. I can guarantee you that. But whatever they are,
a lot of them have been abused since they were children.
I believe that.
That's what's really crazy about these families that we're talking about, these less than 1%ers, is a lot of them, believe it or not, are actually like Saturnists or Satanists or Luciferians, and they have been growing up in these families, you know, obviously all of their lives, but these families have been doing these kinds of things for centuries, for millennia. And yes, child abuse is one of those things. It's a way of causing what's called disassociation. And it's how they introduce the spirit world to their children, is by allowing them to have such extreme trauma that they disassociate from their physical bodies. And then eventually those people turn into psychopaths when they become adults.
Right, and that's happening to a lot of families. And they're enforcing it on the population too. What they're doing to their own families, they're enforcing on the population.
Oh yeah, with
Um,
these false flags and stuff, yeah, it is a form of ritual abuse for sure.
oh
And the
yeah,
thing is I it's really far out there for a lot of people, but when you think about like the Canaanites doing what they were doing, or the Babylonians doing what they were doing, child and human sacrifice, that kind of stuff in public, in broad daylight, you know what I mean, like in ritual format to false gods, then it's really not all that far-fetched to think that, believe it or not, if Hebrews are still around, if Christians, if Muslims, if Buddhists and Hindus are still around, then you better believe that these ancient religions of child or human sacrifice are also still around. They're just underground, and in many cases they are the participants of these things are families that have been associated with the empires of the past, where they
I
did these
agree.
things openly. It's like, well,
Yeah,
yeah, that would make sense.
right, exactly. And as far as like what we need to do here on Earth in the physical universe in the government, um, I agree with what you're saying. And I also agree it's even kind of more fundamental, which is like these bad, we need to take their power away from them. And I'm talking physically. Now, spiritually, that's another subject, but physically,
But hold on, is that how? Here's the thing, though, and believe me, because I understand what you're saying. But think about this, because look, I don't agree with Joe Biden,
right.
very often at all. Okay, but a broken clock is right twice a day, and when he said that the American people are going to need more than an AR-15, they're going to need an F-15 in order to take on the government. He was right about that. They've got
Yeah,
drones, they've got
right.
airplanes, they've got they got it all, dude. They got directed energy weapons and psychotronic
Yep.
weaponry. They've got all sorts of shit. Okay, so the real trick here is to win the war for your mind. And if you personally win the war for your mind and you start, behaving differently, you start using, your time, your energy, your attention, your money differently, then you actually deal to them the largest blow that you possibly could on an individual level. And by winning the war for your mind, you actually help humanity win the war for the planet. Because the only thing that makes up this machine, the only thing that allows these people to believe that they're in power, is for us to go along with it, for them to have our compliance. So, yeah, when you say forcefully, what I
No,
think
no,
that,
no, that's not what
you
I was
know,
saying. No,
oh, okay, okay, okay.
I,
Go
no,
ahead.
I was saying physically. And
Yeah.
what I
Oh,
mean is the
physically, yeah,
physical,
yeah.
what I mean is the physical universe
Okay.
in the government and stuff. I'm not talking about forcefully taking over the government or something like
Okay.
that. I'm talking and putting these guys out of power. I'm talking about an intellectual way of doing it, which is basically what I feel. These guys, as far as their control on us, their monetary control on us. I mean, look at all the stuff they're controlling. They're controlling the stock market, which is just a gambling casino. They're controlling the printing of money. They're controlling the food, everything, right? Well, these guys are congregating into our Federal Reserve System. That's where they pull the strings from in many ways. And the Federal Reserve System here in the U.S., that's only one of many central banks. There's central banks all over the world doing the same thing. And these guys, their monetary interests are tied up in this stuff. And they are not part of our government. But they pull the strings on our economy. They decide interest rates. They decide how much money is going to be. And they aren't our government. They aren't us, the people. So that needs to be replaced, not just wiped out. People have been saying we need to wipe out the Fed for a long time. We need to replace it. And what we need to replace it with is what Alexander Hamilton started way back when, after around the Revolution, which is a national bank. This is what he put in place.
Yeah, I
For
know. I know what you're talking about. Just to let you know, I don't agree about Alexander Hamilton's desire for a national or central bank.
Okay, all right. But what I'm trying to say though is If we had the purpose of, and Lincoln did the same thing, he called it the Greenbacks program. And basically, what it amounts to is whether we do it, we would never do it exactly how Hamilton did it anyway. But what it is instead of the Federal Reserve, we have a banking system which actually gives credit to industry and organizations who are producing for our nation. In other words, they inject money into things that actually make things better. Improved health, energy, okay? The things that make us able to thrive and survive. And instead of our money going into junk, wars, let's say, that's a large part of where our money's going right now from these guys. It's going into war, which all it does is make money for the military-industrial complex and so on, right? So instead of that, it gets invested into productive things we all need: energy, food, the right kind of food, things like that. And then it gets paid back with interest, and we thrive that way. And that is a solution, as far as I'm concerned. A solution, not the whole ball of wax.
Well, I mean, it's, there was a lot of founding fathers that agreed with Hamilton. There was others that did not.
They had their disagreements.
The arguments on both sides. There were disagreements amongst our founding fathers. There
absolutely.
Were. I mean, I think that at the end of the day, do you know what goldbacks are?
I might have. Tell me now.
One second. Let me grab one. 1 second. I'm gonna grab one.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. This is a goldback. This is a Wyoming goldback. Okay. This is worth about $4.50. Actually, probably at this point, this is worth $5. This is real gold. This is real gold. It is 1,000th troy ounce, 24 karat gold. So this is a gold back, and it's basically like a dollar bill, quote unquote, of gold. Okay, so we can, and this is from Wyoming. There's other ones. There's ones from Utah. There's ones from all over the states, all over. They're trying to bring it here in Arizona. We can do this with gold. We can do it with silver. We can do it with copper. We can do it with, you name it, titanium. We can do this. And we can have state-backed money, and, we can also have federal money. And you could do gold backs. My thing is, I like decentralization. I don't like the centralization of money or power. Because ultimately, where there is a single place that can warp the fabric of the country, it will be warped by somebody eventually. What we want to do is have almost like a fractal type design. And that's why I have the opinion I do about the Hamilton thing. But long story short, I think we're actually going to need a 3-tier financial or economic system. One being precious metal-backed currency, 2 being cryptocurrency, 3 being a barter system. And we can use any or all 3 of these. And if any or one of them go out or have a bad day, we also have the other ones to kind of act like safety nets.
Oh, yeah, I agree as far as a means of exchange, right? But what about actual production? Where does that come? Yeah, actual production of goods. Where does the energy and money come from to do that?
Okay, well, this is what I was saying earlier about the energy production, or where we get energy from. If we get energy from a Tesla coil or a Tesla tower or a 0-point energy engine, right? That's infinite clean wireless electricity, or just infinite clean energy. So when the energy supply is infinite, then the cost of not just energy production, but energy acquisition, et cetera, all those things go down dramatically. And you don't need to pay to maintain wires or transformers or power plants or anything like that. It's not quite the same, and if you have things like 0-point energy engines, then you can make houses entirely off the grid and self-sufficient, no need to pay a power company. So there's all sorts of applications for this new form of energy that if we adopt, it'll actually kind of level out our economy, because part of the reason our economy is unstable is because we're based on the petrodollar, and we're literally paying like billions of dollars a day. Billions of dollars is exchanging hands between one person, one corporation to another, right? All for oil. So if most of that is kept to a minimum, then, something like a precious metal backed currency isn't so, isn't so unfeasible. And I think that when you have that infinite energy there, you're going to end up seeing almost like a wellspring of water. You're going to see economic growth around it, because the free energy allows people to use that to create something or do something with it. And then from that energy and from that work, they will be able to produce products or goods or services.
That sounds intelligent. Okay, it really does. And I think that's something that people should look into. And I shall be looking into that. I have not so far.
Thank you. Well, I can send you the patent for the 0-point energy engine. It was released to the public in 2020 during the Trump administration. And I can also send you what I know about Tesla towers and Tesla coils.
I would love to see that. And I did look up a couple of those 3 patents you had mentioned. You had mentioned with Tucker Carlson. Didn't really spend a lot of time on it, so I don't fully understand. But I saw they're there. Okay. And I know that whatever is good and productive is going to be suppressed by, for a lack of better term, the oligarchs. Okay. That's the thing. And we need to learn about these things, and then we can have agreements or disagreements even. But let's know what the hell we're talking about, instead of just saying, right off the bat, because I just heard it on Fox News that this is bad and you're an idiot if you believe it. You know what I mean? It's like, exactly. Makes zero sense. And, I think we're learning a lesson right in front of us in our system with RFK, Tulsi Gabbard, people like that, Elon Musk uniting with Trump. Because, look, after those of us who've been following these guys for years, they are very opposite in many ways. But look at them coming together, and actually I think they've all got something to learn from each other. And they're doing it right in front of us. We're seeing this. They're saying, well, I don't necessarily agree with you or you, but I'm going to unite with you because I sure as hell don't want what these guys are doing over here. We're still all for our basic freedom, what we wanted from the American Revolution. And lost my train of thought there. Oh, I was going to say is, I think this is what was going on with our forefathers when they were during the American Revolution, during the forming of our Constitution. They were uniting against England, right? And against this.
And people came together of different minds and different ideas, and everybody was like, yeah, well, we can all agree, fuck that.
Right. Right. We'll even allow slavery for a little while, right? Temporarily. This is them back then. All right. I got to give that up, getting rid of slavery for now. But let's get along.
There was a multitude of things that they wanted to change. They had to choose their battles, unfortunately.
They did.
But the thing is that at the end of the day, America did ban it, even if it's, like less than 100 years later, it still, was abolished.
Right. Exactly. And anyway, I think I'm very encouraged by what's going on these days. I think we had a pretty good discussion here. And
Agreed.
thank you. And I think we've given people a lot of food for thought. I mean,
absolutely. And if they like what they've heard here from me, they can check me out at forbiddenTruthAcademy.com. That's Forbidden Truth, Truth, Academy.com, where we have literally dozens of hours of free content that you can check out, whether it's interviews or spaces or videos, you name it, podcasts. We've also got my book, One Mind at a Time, A Deep State of Illusion. If you want to know what the deep state is in, like, seriously 150 pages, it's only $9.99. You know, that's what that I intended that book to be. Is it's just like an overall explanation for what the deep state is, to make the case that it exists, what it is, and solutions of how we can deal with it. And then there's also ways that people can, you know, like schedule me for an interview, or, you know, for a personal consultation, like a spiritual consultation. You can do that as well. And there's also some merchandise that's on my website that's pretty, you know, awesome. And you can follow me on X or Twitter at America Shaman. That's at America Shaman on X. America Shaman, at America Shaman on X.
and that is on your website. I know, because that's how I got a hold of you. So, and I will be putting your website and information on the post monologue I give at the end here. So after we're done. Yeah, you're very welcome. I thank you. And I'm glad I finally got to meet you. You're not just that guy in the Shaman outfit that they portrayed as this evil bastard on J6. You're a good thinking, well-intended person who's actually doing something about things. So, and that's why I had you on here. So I thank you very much, Jake. And you have a very good rest of your day.
You too. God bless. Namaste.
Thank you. You take care. Thank you all for listening. And please remember to like or subscribe, or both, depending on what platform you're viewing or listening on. Well, there you have it, folks. Simply a man with a desire to help, and his own ideas on how to do so. Agree or disagree, he's actually doing something. And I encourage everyone to practice their own ideas as to how to help and do something. To find out more about Jacob and his activities, you can go to his website, forbiddenTruthAcademy.com, and also check out his book, One Mind at a Time, A Deep State of Illusion. And one big thing we can all do is to get out there and vote Trump as early as possible. Until next time, remember to take control of your liberty, because you don't want anyone else doing that but you.